Imagine two massive, loud, tectonic plates constantly grinding against each other in our cultural conversation. On one side, you have the boomers, and on the other, millennials and Gen Z being dissected endlessly like some fascinating new species. But wedged silently in the crushing pressure between them is a demographic layer that is almost entirely invisible. I am talking about Generation X, the cohort born roughly between 1965 and 1980. These are your older coworkers who clock in and never complain, or your parents who sometimes seem oddly detached from the chaos of modern life. They literally built the internet, yet they refuse to post photos of their avocado toast. But here is the secret nobody tells you. There is a hidden psychological paradox wired into the brains of this specific generation, a survival mechanism forged in empty houses and economic crashes that makes their psychology the most deeply misunderstood of anyone alive today. I'm going to reveal exactly what that paradox is, and by the end of this video, the quietest people in your life are going to make terrifying perfect sense. Understanding this forgotten middle child of history is not just a trip down memory lane, it is an absolute masterclass in emotional resilience, offering us a blueprint for how to build impenetrable mental armor in a world that feels completely out of control. To understand the Gen X operating system, you have to rewind the tape to 1978. Picture an 8-year-old kid stepping off a yellow school bus, walking up to an empty house and unlocking the front door with a key worn around their neck. Both parents are still at work, grinding away. There are no smartphones buzzing in their pockets, no Ring cameras tracking their movements on the porch, and absolutely no digital tether to check if they made it home alive. This was the first time in modern history we saw a massive, nationwide wave of latchkey kids. They walked into the quiet living room, fixed themselves a plate of whatever snack they could scavenge, sat down to do their math homework in total silence, and just waited. This was not a rare occurrence. A study published in the American Journal of Orthopsychiatry revealed that by 1984, roughly 7 million children between the ages of 5 and 13 were routinely left completely unsupervised after the school bell rang. Think about the profound psychological impact of that empty house. It did way more than just teach them how to use a microwave or become fiercely self-reliant. It hardwired a deeply ingrained belief that you simply cannot always count on someone else being there to catch you. Researchers call this upbringing a high-contingency environment. In normal terms, it means the gap between making a mistake and facing the music was virtually non-existent, stripping away any protective buffer. If you messed up, broke a window, or crossed a line, you could not talk your way out of it, and nobody cared to sit down and validate your feelings about the incident. When their parents finally walked through the door, the rules were enforced hard and fast. You stepped out of line, and you paid the price immediately. Because of this, their developing brains learned to calculate and predict consequences in real time, scanning the horizon for potential fallout. This is exactly why your Gen X manager or mentor always seems to be thinking 3 steps ahead in a way that completely baffles younger generations. They are constantly playing chess with reality because their childhood did not afford them the luxury of playing checkers. As these kids grew up, they were sold the classic American dream. Every adult in their life handed them the same script, promising that if you just work hard, keep your head down, and follow the rules, life will naturally work out perfectly. But Gen X had a front-row seat to watch that script get shredded right in front of their eyes. They listened to their parents preach about the sanctity of family stability, only to watch divorce rates violently skyrocket through the 70s and 80s. They watched loyal, hard-working people give their absolute blood, sweat, and tears to massive corporations, only to be casually handed pink slips the moment the next brutal round of corporate layoffs hit. Academics and psychologists love to label this mindset as defensive pessimism, but if you ask a Gen Xer, they will just call it being a realist. It is not that they walk around radiating bitter cynicism. Instead, they have carefully constructed a thick layer of emotional armor to protect themselves from a world that constantly changes the terms of service without warning. They will cross their fingers and hope for the best, but deep down in their gut, they are always bracing for the rug to be violently pulled out from under them. And honestly, can you blame them? That is exactly what kept happening to them time and time again. This defensive posture completely transformed their relationship with work, creating an approach that stands out wildly in today's loud hustle culture landscape. Today, people want to broadcast every minor career achievement on social media, but Gen X operates differently. They simply do the work. They do not talk about doing the work, and they certainly do not post about it online. This incredibly resilient work ethic was forged in the fires of early, grueling jobs that seem practically archaic to a modern teenager. We are talking about waking up at 5 in the morning to ride a bicycle through the dark for a paper route, bagging groceries for hours on end, or standing behind a fast food register where you actually had to calculate the customer's exact change in your own head because the digital machine broke down. These were not highly curated resume builders designed to impress a college admissions board. They were raw, unfiltered introductions to the unforgiving adult world, a world where a literal 12-year-old child could be held entirely responsible for delivering the daily news to an entire suburban neighborhood. Having watched their parents' lives get utterly destroyed by heartless corporate restructuring, Gen X never bought into the illusion of company loyalty. But do not mistake that for laziness. They are fiercely, uncompromisingly loyal to their own personal competence. They realized early on that they cannot control whether the economy tanks or whether they get laid off, but they can absolutely control whether they are the single most valuable, highly skilled person in the room when those inevitable layoffs finally happen. This obsession with competence bleeds directly into their incredibly complicated relationship with authority figures. Gen X respects raw skill, not fancy titles printed on a business card. If you are a leader who has actually earned your position by proving your expertise in the trenches, they will march into battle for you and follow you anywhere. But if you are just a smooth talker with an inflated job title who clearly does not know what they are doing, their patience drops to absolute zero. They have a deeply ingrained reflex to question authority because they spent their entire formative childhoods watching wildly incompetent leaders make catastrophic decisions. They grew up in the looming shadows of the Watergate scandal, the Iran-Contra affair, and the terrifying, tragically fumbled response to the early AIDS crisis. Furthermore, their timing was economically cursed. They faced massive financial headwinds that the generations before them simply did not have to navigate. The youngest members of this cohort proudly threw their graduation caps in the air, just in time to walk directly into the devastating dot-com bubble burst. Meanwhile, the oldest members were just finally hitting their career stride when the brutal 2008 financial crisis wiped out the global economy. They have been economically traumatized on repeat. This is precisely why you will often find them quietly managing multiple streams of income. They are not doing it because they have some flashy, inherently entrepreneurial spirit. They are doing it because history has violently taught them that nothing in this world truly lasts.
This innate distrust of permanence is a huge reason why they're practically ghosts on modern social media platforms. Generation X was raised in a bygone era where basic privacy was just the normal, default setting of human existence. When you made a catastrophic, embarrassing mistake as a teenager, maybe a handful of your close friends knew about it, and the story died right there. There were no camera phones capturing your worst moments, no viral videos, and no digital footprints. There were just some awkward, fading memories made in a friend's damp basement or a fluorescent-lit mall parking lot. So when society suddenly shifted to a model where everyone is enthusiastically blasting their private lives out into the digital void for millions of total strangers to judge, Gen X recoiled. To them, playing the influencer game does not feel fun or exciting. It feels incredibly risky. This is not a case of old people failing to understand new technology. It is the result of a generation learning a fundamental survival rule very early in life. The fewer people who know your business, the safer you inevitably are. In the Gen X worldview, being highly visible is completely synonymous with being highly vulnerable. To cope with this underlying anxiety, they essentially turned irony into an impenetrable shield. Their default reaction to stress is to crack a dark joke, keep emotional situations at a safe arm's length, and laugh off the pain before it has a chance to actually sting. If you trace this back, the origins are glaringly obvious. They spent their youth growing up under the terrifying, icy shadow of the Cold War. Their teachers talked about the very real possibility of global nuclear annihilation with the same casual tone you would use to discuss a rainy Tuesday. They were forced to practice absurd duck and cover drills in their classrooms, curling up on the floor as if a flimsy wooden desk was somehow going to magically save them from an atomic blast. When the trusted adults in your life are acting like the entire world is about to go up in literal smoke while simultaneously insisting with a forced smile that you should not worry about it, you develop a unique psychological glitch. You get incredibly used to holding two wildly clashing, contradictory ideas in your mind at the exact same time. You learn to keep a little bit of emotional distance from everything and everyone just in case the worst-case scenario actually plays out. This extreme independence even shaped how their brains process basic knowledge. Long before the convenience of the internet, acquiring information carried a tangible physical weight. Gen X students spent countless hours trapped in quiet libraries, hunting through massive wooden card catalog drawers just to find a single dusty book that might possibly contain the answer to their research question. Information literally had a physical cost associated with it, demanding real effort, patience, and time. Because they had to sweat for it, they naturally valued what they learned on a completely different level. Cognitive psychologists refer to this phenomenon as deeper encoding. When you have to expend physical and mental energy to obtain a piece of information, your brain integrates it much more permanently into your long-term memory. This tactical, hands-on approach spilled over into how they interacted with the physical world. They learned how to fix broken things with their own two bare hands. If your bicycle chain slipped off the gears or the television started flickering, you did not cry about it, and you certainly did not call a professional technician. You flipped the bike upside down on the driveway, got black grease permanently stained into your hands, and you figured out the mechanics yourself. This repetitive cycle built a profound mechanical intuition. It forged an unshakable belief that if you just have enough patience, a little bit of grit, and a flathead screwdriver, you can eventually master the physical world around you.
However, this superpower has a remarkably dark underbelly. Generation X tends to deeply struggle with behavioral patterns of extreme self-reliance that frequently border on clinical anxiety. If the building is burning down, they are incredibly capable, cool-headed heroes who excel at handling intense crisis situations. But that legendary capability often stems from a stubborn, rigid unwillingness to ever depend on another human being. Fascinating research published in the Journal of Adult Development clearly demonstrates that compared to other demographics, Gen Xers report significantly lower levels of actively seeking out social support during highly stressful periods in their lives. It is not that they are unloved or do not have a network of people they could call for help. It is because, to them, asking someone else for a favor feels exactly like admitting a crushing personal defeat. Now these hyper-independent survivors are sitting back and watching their own children grow up in a completely alien, hyper-connected digital landscape. They are raising kids in a modern society dominated by anxious helicopter parents, constant supervision, and the relentless pressure of social media documenting every waking second of life. In an effort to heal their own childhood wounds, Gen X aggressively pivoted. They desperately wanted to give their kids all the warm attention and close supervision that they themselves never experienced. But late at night, in the quiet moments, they deeply worry about the results of this overcompensation. They quietly agonize over whether they have accidentally made the next generation too soft, far too dependent on others, and dangerously too visible to a cruel world. Which brings us back to that massive paradox I promised you at the beginning. Gen X is simultaneously the most stubbornly independent generation alive, yet ironically, they are the most quietly collaborative and dependable people you will ever meet. They will absolutely never ask you for help because they have been figuring it out entirely on their own since they were 8 years old. But if you are drowning and you need help, They will show up at your door without an ounce of drama, and they will fix your problem without ever making a performative social media post about their good deed. This fierce, unspoken loyalty comes directly from forming incredibly tight bonds with their childhood friends out of pure necessity, back in the days when their parents were perpetually absent. Generation X is truly the ultimate bridge generation. They are the critical, load-bearing architecture shaped by a highly unique moment in history, standing strong during a time when the old analog world was violently dying and the new digital one had not quite been fully born. As a bridge, they do not get much flashy attention, and they are rarely the center of the cultural conversation. The truth is, they might very well be the last group of humans who truly understand what it means to be totally alone with your own thoughts, to experience pure boredom, and to solve complex problems without frantically Googling the answer. They are just quietly existing in the background, consistently doing the heavy lifting, holding the fracturing pieces of our society together, and expecting absolutely nothing in return. And maybe, in the end, that is the single most Gen X thing of all, simply not caring if anyone even notices. If this deep dive resonated with you or helped you understand someone in your life a little better, please hit that subscribe button to join our community. I would genuinely appreciate it if you drop a like and head down to the comments right now to let me know your thoughts. Are you a Gen Xer who feels seen, or a younger viewer who just had a massive light bulb moment about your parents? Let's talk about it.